Hey, everybody, welcome to a special edition of EduMatch. So follow along with us on Twitter with the hashtag EduMatch. And speaking of EduMatch, you could be the featured person of the day at our website, edumatch.org. But today I am super, super excited to have my friend on here. We have Tom Murray of Future Ready and super, super excited to just pick his brain. So let me tell you all a little bit about Tom. So Tom serves as the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools, a project of the Alliance for Excellent Education located in Washington, D.C. He's testified before the United States Congress and works alongside that body, the U.S. Senate, the White House, the U.S. Department of Education, and state departments of education, corporations, and school districts throughout the country to implement student-centered personalized learning while helping to lead Future Ready Schools and Digital Learning Day. Tom also serves as a regular conference keynote, and he was named the 2017 Education Thought Leader of the Year and one of 20 to watch by the National School Board Association in 2016. In addition, he was named one of the one of the top 20 thought leaders in education, and was named the Education Policy Person of the Year by the Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2015. And I was fortunate to get a copy of his new book, which is Learning Transformed. And this is co-authored with Eric Sheninger and published by ASCD. It's available for sale, and it has been the #1 new release in education in 2 different categories since it was released. So Tom, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
What's up, my friend? It is awesome to be here. I appreciate the invite. I love the EduMatch community and the work that you all are doing there. Honor to be here on this beautiful summer day. I'm happy to be in Pennsylvania today, Texas tomorrow. It's awesome to be with you today. So excited to be here, share some things going on, and connect with some great people.
Oh, that is great. Yeah, we are super excited to hear from you. So definitely thank you again for doing this. So we're just going to kick things off with a couple of questions just to get to know you a little bit. So could you tell us a little bit about your background in education?
Sure. And I think it's always important for me. I feel like compelled to share right from the get-go. I'm not some 50,000-foot policy person in DC that's never been there, never done that. But we've got enough people like that in Washington, DC. I spent my entire career up until about 3 years ago, first as a 4th grade teacher. I did that for a handful of years. I moved to middle school. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for a handful of years. I then became an middle school assistant principal. I did that for a few years. I went back to the elementary level as an elementary principal. I did that for 3 years. And then I moved over to district office, and I was over there for 3 years. So a total about 15 years in public education in Pennsylvania. I like to say I obviously couldn't keep a job jumping around, so I went to work with politicians in DC, right? And so in terms of backgrounds, my heart and soul is in the classroom. It's in with kids. It's teaching and learning. It's loving and caring about kids and relationships with kids. But now in my current role, I get to do multiple things. One, and you heard from the introduction piece, some of the policy side of things and work on big picture things like ESSA and Title IV and privacy and federal law and those types of things. But that's not my favorite. What I like to do now is work with school leaders, work with amazing teachers, work with amazing principals, school leaders, people like Sarah, all across the country, and just help push some thinking, help support some of the struggles. We've got a lot of struggles and a lot of things in our education system that just aren't right, vast inequities and things that we've really got to hit head on. And so I love being able to work with school leaders all the time through Future Ready Schools. For everybody listening, check out futureready.org. I love being in a position to say, we don't sell anything. Everything from Future Ready is totally free. It is bipartisan, and it is absolutely great to be able to support school leaders. And when I say leaders, by the way, this is an issue that Eric and I tackle in Learning Transformed. I'm not talking about leaders by title. I'm talking about leaders by action. So if you're a teacher watching this, you have the opportunity to lead. You've got 2 feet, you've got 2 hands, you get up there, we can lead, not just leaders by title who happen to be there by default. Some of the greatest leaders I've had the opportunity to work with are a 5th or 6th year teacher that are doing incredible things in their schools. And so I just want to be clear with that from the get-go. But that's where I'm at, Sarah. It's 15, 16, now about almost 20 years in education, and loving and caring about kids is the heart of what we do.
Wow, that is awesome. And I love what you were saying about leadership, how anyone can be a leader. It's all about that action, and it's all about that vision and that focus and mobilizing towards that goal. So absolutely. And thank you for raising that point. So what inspired you to go into the field of education?
So I actually went to college to be pre-med. I knew I always wanted to work with kids. I loved working with kids. It was something I did growing up, whether it was through my church or through other organizations. I just had a heart for kids. Part of it was my own story in terms of being really young, and I don't have time to get into that today, but I had a heart for other children, and I had a heart for things that I was very privileged for that I knew other children didn't. And so I had a heart for kids. And so first I thought I wanted to do it from a medical end. I thought I wanted to be able to connect with kids, but I realized I don't want to see them with just when they're sick. I want to get to know them. I want to care about these kids and support kids. I want to help be dad to a kid that doesn't have that, and maybe be that male figure for them if they need that. And so I moved to education in my second year, and I never turned back from that. Part of the reason of the who, my mom is a piano teacher, and I saw kids coming through my house literally every day coming through, and I saw the impact she had, the relationships she had, the connection she had to families, and that was really attractive to me. And the second piece, I can remember a handful of teachers throughout my career that really pointed me in the right direction. Some of them were the most rigorous, difficult, challenging people, but I knew they cared about me, and they pushed my thinking, and they pushed me hard, and it really, really helped set the tone for where I was going to go. And so I can think of a number of them that really inspired me to say, hey, maybe you can make a difference too in the lives of other people, just like they did for me. So who? Teachers. Teachers did it for me.
Absolutely. And that relationship piece that you're speaking to is so clutch. You know, the power of a great educator to influence our lives is just, it can't be understated. So definitely couldn't agree with you more on that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's shift gears a little bit to what you, to your current position. So what does the Alliance for Education do, and how did you become involved with them?
Sure, great. So my first tie to the Alliance for Excellent Education was actually Digital Learning Day. When I was a tech director, I was in a school district in Pennsylvania, Quakertown. We happened to be one of the 3 districts in the nation that were getting highlighted on Digital Learning Day. Digital Learning Day is one of the programs that came out of the Alliance. And people will sometimes say, like, hey, is that just one day to do digital learning? And we always laugh, like, no, it's to showcase the great things that happen all across the country, all the time, not let's do digital learning one day. So that was my original connection to them. And as I got to know them, what's fascinating about the organization that I currently work for, it's bipartisan, it's a nonprofit. And so we work with both sides of the aisle. And part of the House works with the Senate and the Congress, and you heard some of that in the intro, in a bipartisan fashion. But in the same sense, part of the work for the Alliance, really the mission comes down to kids and graduation and high school. And we really have a focus on equity, really looking at traditionally underserved students, whether that's our students of color, whether that's our females in certain areas, whether that's our rural students, but those that don't have it all, that don't just live in the suburbs, that are in a great school, that have the money. What about everybody else? What about all means all is really truly part of our work. And so equity is a core component to the work of the Alliance. Future Ready Schools grew out of the Alliance as well, which I know we can talk about here as well in just a little bit. And the U.S. Department of Education, I'll get into that in just a little bit, where that all came from. But the work of the Alliance focused on high achievement for all kids, focused on experiences for all kids, particularly those that are traditionally underserved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So definitely, definitely having quality education for all students, and moving everyone forward. So absolutely agree with that. So that kind of brings us up to speaking about Future Ready. So what exactly does Future Ready mean, and where did that come from?
Sure. So Future Ready itself, I would probably say first and foremost is a mindset of growth and how do we do things better for kids. It's about visioning. It's about leadership. It's about culture. What I didn't say from the get-go is it's about technology. Now, what I'll tell you is technology plays a very big role in it. But too often we're leading with tech, and we could have all the tech that we want in the world. We're buying billions of dollars of it across the country. In and of itself, it doesn't do anything. And so it's focused on leadership. It's focused on culture, and we can dive into that. Where did it come from? So I want to give a shout out to Richard Collada. He used to be at the U.S. Department of Education. He now is actually the brand new president of ISTE. Awesome, awesome leader. Well, Richard was the director of the Office of Educational Technology. I want to give them a shout at the U.S. Department of Education. Incredible work coming out of there. I encourage you to check out their work, tech.ed.gov. They do a lot of great things related to ed tech. Well, Richard had convened, also it had grown out of President Obama's Connect Ed initiative. And if you remember the Connect Ed initiative, part of it was about devices, part of it was about professional learning, part of it was about access, where he challenged companies to step up to support schools. But part of what Future Ready was it can't just be about devices and stuff. It's got to be about leadership. You see, and when you look at the research and having the opportunity, I've probably been in 100 districts in the past couple of years. You know, you could be 3-to-1 with devices, but if you don't have a dynamic school culture and dynamic leaders, and again, not just by title, but by dynamic leaders, it's not going to go anywhere. Because what we've also seen is places that don't have a whole lot, where they don't have many devices, they don't have a lot of money to buy stuff, but yet they're doing amazingly innovative things for kids. And what's the constant there? It's leadership, and it's a dynamic school culture. And in the same sense, in a toxic school environment, innovation is not going to thrive. Teachers are not going to be willing to take risks, and understandably so, in that lead by fear mentality sometimes we have from admin colleagues of mine. And so where did it come from? I want to give a big shout out to President Obama, Connect Ed initiative, the big picture across the board there, the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Ed Tech. But they also wanted to make sure that it would live through a presidential transition, that it would live through and also not be a partisan thing. Because related to Future Ready, it was really important that we could do the same work in the, and I'll just be stereotypical here, the reddest area of Texas or the bluest area of California, and do the same work, because it's not about being red or blue. It's about kids, and it's about supporting all kids and loving and caring about kids and do whatever we can. So I want to give a big shout out to them. But the Alliance, as the nonprofit that's bipartisan, took it under our umbrella to be able to move forward and be able to say, how do we continue this work? How do we partner with all these other organizations? And I want to give a shout out to those organizations. If people go to futureready.org/partners, it's truly the alphabet soup of education. You'll see from AASA for our superintendents, to NAESP, NASSP for our principals, to ISTE, to COSIN, and all these different groups, over 60 national and local and regional organizations coming together to say, how do we do this better for kids? How do we share our resources? How do we pool our organizations? How do we collaborate on projects to serve kids better? And so a little bit of history there. We had the opportunity, President Obama kicked it off at the White House and is connected to the Future launch there, which was really pretty cool. We've had a lot of experiences, a lot of events since. To give you some perspective, we do events all over the country. We've got 8 of them this year. They're all totally free because Future Ready doesn't sell anything. It's grant funded in different ways. We have certain corporations that their foundations give as well in their effort to give back. And so a couple key pieces: 1, it's bipartisan; 2, it's free. We don't sell anything; 3, it's grant funded. It's not some hidden catch. It's not like, for $19.99 a month, you can be Future Ready too. Like, there's none of that. It's truly, and having been a district admin and a teacher for a long time, you're always looking at skepticism, and I get it, because I've been that guy being like, what's the catch? There is none. It's truly to help support teachers and schools across the country.
And that's very important. That is very important that we that we all work together to help move this to help move schools forward. So I really admire and respect the work that you all do at Future Ready. And, I really appreciate being involved in the movement. So I was going to ask you right now, how can people get involved with the Future Ready movement?
Great. And we love opportunities for people to connect and serve. One of the things, and for what Sarah was just referring to, that this past year, we really expanded it, because for the first 2 years of Future Ready, it was very much driven, a really focus, I should say, on district level admin. You see, we could get a handful of people on board on a district, but if we didn't get some admin on board, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to shift the system as a whole as a district. But we really wanted to expand that. And so last year around ISTE time, we launched Future Ready Librarians. That has been a very dynamic community. If you go to futureready.org/librarians, you can see a framework that extrapolates from the Future Ready framework. We've got Facebook groups for all the groups that I'm about to mention. Librarians was one of the first ones. Over 7,000 educators are taking part in the Future Ready Facebook group, just connecting and collaborating and sharing ideas and sharing resources. No sales pitch, otherwise you get the boot from the group. And other groups, so a couple months ago, about a month and a half ago, we launched Future Ready Principals. We launched Future Ready Instructional Coaches, which Sarah is one of our 2 national advisors on that. We launched Future Ready IT for more of your tech directors, boxes and wires, and that's something that we're now partnering with COSIN on, the tech director group, and the principals group, and AESP, and those organizations as well, partnering with them on that. And when we take a look at these different groups, the district leadership group as well, we're really trying to expand that. And so instructional coaches, we also would include lead teachers or teacher leaders that are leading in their schools as well. And so those are some of the different ways. And how can you get involved? There's a variety of things. Number 1, we've got 8 summits this year coming up. They're all free. They're all across the country. We're calling them institutes. Summits was our previous word. It's all brand new designed content. So if you've been to one of those events, it's all going to be brand new. It's not going to be a repeat. But at these events, we're also going to have strands. So we'll have a strand for principals, a strand for IT, a strand for coaches and teacher leaders, a strand for librarians, a strand for district office folk. On a daily basis, they're all on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, you have to request access. They are closed groups, but you can look one of those up. You can see those online. just to connect and to collaborate, kind of like what EduMatch is so good at, of just creating that community to network and connect people as well. We want to be able to help people in that environment to connect and be able to share things. We also have a variety of activities that go on. If you go to the hub, futureready.org/hub, there's a variety of things that we do, from webinars just like this, where we connect and collaborate and share things out with people, to ongoing things such as conferences. Coming up next week, there's ISTE. I know Sarah's going to be there. I'm going to be flying in that day to do a session with another one of our advisors in that regard there too. A lot of them will actually be there at ISTE, or Model Schools. I'll be at that one first. And at a lot of the different conferences, watch for things related to Future Ready, because we have probably about 20 conferences that we're partnering, whether it's ICE or FETC or CUE or TCEA, or it's some of your other national ones like Model Schools or ISTE. There's a variety of opportunities to kind of get engaged and make connections in those environments. So lots of stuff going on, lots of stuff to get plugged into. If you're on Twitter, use the Future Ready hashtag, follow at Future Ready as well. And we're constantly sharing and networking and collaborating there as well. And no cost for any of that.
Oh, see, that's my favorite word, free. Definitely. So love. Yeah, so love that y'all have all of those resources available for free. So definitely wanted to encourage any viewers right now, as well as the EduMatch community that will be hearing this later on, to definitely get involved. So there's so many great resources that you just shared out that Future Ready offers to schools and districts. So, and you also give a lot of your knowledge and a lot of yourself to education. So I just, because this just came in today, so I am loving this. Learning Transformed, like everything I hear about this book is just amazing. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about the book. So if you could tell us a little bit about Learning Transformed, the 8 Keys to Designing Tomorrow's Schools Today.
Sure. So Eric Sheninger is my co-author. I want to give a shout out to him. Eric's one of my best friends, and Eric and I both do a lot of work with truly thousands of school leaders across the country every year. We get in a lot of schools. We have a lot of difficult conversations, a lot of great conversations as well, from with teachers to principals to superintendents. And what we really wanted to do is number one, is good friends, but we're also getting a lot of questions through Future Ready and through his work through ICLE and his organization that he works with. And we're getting a lot of questions from school leaders that needed to be answered. You know, Sarah, I really believe we've got a vast amount of fluff out there when we talk about educational stuff, you know, and part of it was, as we work with high-level leaders, superintendents and principals, we couldn't bring fluff to them. We can't bring them just the latest trend and just hop on the bandwagon, let's give it a shot, because they're responsible and accountable to the community and to the money they spend. And ultimately we all are, but they feel that pressure very much so of, hey, if we're gonna invest these hundreds of thousands of dollars in districts like yours, these millions of dollars, what is it that actually works? And so we took about a year and a half to actually write the book. We cite almost 190 different things related to research and studies, and that to us was absolutely key. And so we designed the 8 keys around research. Number one, what is it that it actually takes to transform districts in different areas? So for instance, our first key is all about creating a culture of innovation, and we hit leadership and we hit culture, really where we started part of this conversation related to that school leadership, because without that leadership or that creating a school culture, innovation is not going to happen. But hear me out. If you're a teacher, what starts to happen in that conversation, sometimes I get the, I told you so, we're never going to get there with my principal. Every single one of you impacts school culture every day. You either build it up or you tear it down. Which one are you? Because sometimes what we see on the flip side is we see 49 people complaining about the one person, and probably justifiably so. But what if those 49 people did everything every day to build the culture up in that building? That one person would get drowned out, even if he or she was the principal, in positive stuff. And so we are all responsible for that. We then moved to redesigning the learning experience. And you know, it was based on data. It was based on studies. We looked at things from like Gallup and student engagement rates to working with Linda Darling-Hammond, one of the top known researchers in the world, and some of the studies she's done related to that. But also one of the really key components of this, and we write about this in our intro, is what's the world of work going to actually look like, or the projections of what it's going to look like when our kids actually get there. You see, part of the reason we wrote the book, we've got little kids. I've got a first grade little girl. I've got a 4-year-old who hasn't even started school yet. My little first grader who just finished first grade, she's the class of 2028. Like, what in the world are things going to look like 2028? So we've got to start to understand what are the projections related to what we talked about as the 4th industrial revolution, and that's automation and robotics. And well, as that world changes, The projections related to things such as the phasing out of a lot of low skill labor. What happens to those families? What happens to those families that don't have the skills? You know, in the 1930s, John Maynard Keynes actually talked about technological unemployment in the 1930s. So what happens there? So it was helping to give a vision of what's it going to look like down the road, and pulling from studies, pulling from things and projections, everything from the White House Economic Council to places like that. And then also then saying, well, how do we build learning experiences to help create skills for kids to get them there? And when you talk about the ability to not just take a test, and we tackle the testing thing head on, that's not going anywhere, but we also don't want to hide about, well, we got to take a test at the end of the year, so we can't do anything else fun ever. Like, that's a mindset issue. So how do we break through to redesign the learning experience to one that's personal, to one that's authentic, to one kids actually remember years down the road? You know, Sarah, I've never had a kid, and I say this often, but I never had a kid in my 15 years come back to me and be like, you know, Mr. Murray, that worksheet changed my life. Like, it never happened, and nor should it. And so how do we, and my first grader, she's working on handwriting, she's working on stuff like that. So, you know, like, I get it. There's a time and a place we need to do certain things like that. But if all we ever do is worksheet kids to death, like, we're not going to be very memorable. And I'm not trying to be, I'm trying to push a little thinking on that, but, you know, I'm not trying to be mean to anybody in that regard. We've got to redesign the learning experience. And so we walk through, what does that look like? What does the research show? And we highlight some case studies at places that are really doing that. We then move from there as well of like, how do we, if we're going to redesign the learning experience, it's got to be grounded in evidence. And so our next key, our third key, is how do we ground these decisions in evidence? And it doesn't mean we don't try something. It doesn't mean we don't pilot something that's new that doesn't have a research study behind it, but we've got to be smart. We are spending billions of dollars a year in technology. As budgets have remained pretty stagnant over the last decade and a half, ed tech spending through the roof. Billions of dollars a year, and so much of it a massive waste of money. What actually works? You know, Sarah, when I was my last board meeting, I used to sit up there with cabinet and sit up there with the board at my last board meeting. And no, I didn't get fired. I was already going to DC at this point. My school board president looked at me and said, you know, Tom, if we're going to spend this dollar amount in technology for next year, will student achievement increase? And it's actually a great question. But to answer the question, you've got to know, like, what actually works. Like, what does the research show actually works with ed tech? And what is a total waste? Because so much of the work that we're doing is really a waste when it comes to the use of tech. And that's why OECD reports in places like that basically come out and say, the more tech we buy doesn't equal more learning. Well, thanks, Captain Obvious, because it's all about the pedagogy and it's all about the experience that the kids have and the interactivity, because low-level tech use gives you low-level learning, which will give you low-level results, period. I mean, we've known that about education. All right, moving on. Enough of that soapbox. So we move then to talking about some of the other pieces is, okay, if we're going to redesign the learning experience, we're going to ground it in evidence and research and I don't want to say data. Sometimes I feel like it's a bad word, but truth, like taking a look at those pieces. Then we also need the spaces to be designed there. One of my personal passions is taking a look at learning spaces. You see, sometimes, Sarah, we walk into places, let me pick on high school for a minute, walk into the average high school in our country, what are we preaching? Oh, we're problem solving, collaborating, 21st century skills. By the way, we're 17 years in. Can we just call them life skills? Side note. And so, like, we're 17 years in, we've got that, we've got all these skills, and yet we walk into the average classroom and it's desks in rows, students facing forward, teachers standing up front. The same way it was 100 years ago. And we can't say we're doing all this one stuff, but then when we walk in, what we physically see is totally opposite of that. And so do the learning spaces match the pedagogy we're looking for? And so we get into the research of what does the research actually show about learning spaces? Let me give you a couple examples here, because sometimes when I start talking learning spaces, especially my admin colleagues, they're like, uh-oh, money, we don't have money, we're not getting all fancy new furniture. And most of the research that we point out has nothing to do with money. Let me give you some examples. When we take a look quickly, and I know we don't have all that time, but let me give you some examples quickly. So when we walk into a classroom, the symbols around the classroom, there's multiple studies related to what are the symbols in a classroom or in a school environment as a whole. And so I got to tell you, when I was a fourth grade teacher in my white male body thinking through what I knew in my world, I didn't give this any thought. So let me get you at what I'm saying, like looking at the research. If all of our symbols around the classroom are white males, multiple studies that we cite show that females will look at that and be like, I guess to be ultimately successful, I had to be a male. Oh well, didn't get that opportunity when I was born. Or our children of color will look at those and be like, gee, like, if I was white, I could have been successful too. And so subliminal messages like that, those symbols will impact the psyche to then impact learning and what they can do and their own achievement. And we cite other studies related to things such as how we decorate classrooms. One of the things about learning spaces, because it's become pretty trendy in the past year or so, maybe a little bit longer than that, people are more concerned sometimes, in my opinion, about designing it for Pinterest or designing it so it looks really, really pretty, as opposed to, well, what's the research say works? So let me give you an example. Sometimes we have to, or all the time, we have to consider, and I wasn't good at this my first few years teaching. It wasn't on my radar in my own little lens. If let me pick on the females that are watching here. I'm going to gender stereotype. I'm pointing that out ahead of time, so don't yell at me. But if we walk in, and I might like, and guys can like this too. Yep, that's correct. But maybe it's all pink and polka dot and all cute and all purple and all like traditional girl colors. I'm pointing out the stereotype. The boys in that environment, pointing out a stereotype, the boys in my environment might not feel welcome because they designed it for their likes, just like I failed at my first year when everything was sports and blue and New York Giants and New York. I decorated my classroom for me, and you notice I'm using decorated because decorations don't do anything. And when we get too many of them, it can actually distract. And what we're seeing is some of the research we point out, when we're doing too much on the walls, walking into the first grade, second grade classroom, you're bobbing and weaving around stuff, right? You're moving all over, bobbing and weaving. Well, in those environments, kids will be about 17% longer, or distracted that much longer, and become more off task. Why? Just because there's so much darn stuff to look at. And so when you have to understand the research, and nothing that I just shared costs money at all. We get into those things like the impact of daylight, the impact of color, how that impacts mood, how that mood then impacts your receptors in your brain for stuff like that. After learning spaces, we talk about professional learning and basically pointing out all the research on the top down, one size fits all, sit and get hours-based accountability. Doesn't show any impact on kids. Yet that's what we all do pretty much nationwide for decades. And so how do we make it more personal? For admin and school leaders, we really, really push. How are you modeling this? This is not about what teachers have to do. This is about what we own and we all have to do. Who's responsible for your professional learning? You. I don't care what your district does. You. And that's a mindset shift. And sure, it's a lot easier said than done, but also, yes, your district has the responsibility. So what can districts do to help personalize? Admin, if you're watching this, if you're telling your teachers they need to personalize for kids, don't you dare turn around and do the exact opposite to them for everything for professional learning. That's hypocritical, and we're going to call that out. So then real quick, then we talk about leveraging technology. What is it that actually works? What's a total waste? What does the research show? But we also hit things, there's a huge equity strand throughout our book, Sarah. You'll see equity related to things like at-home access. 5 million of our nation's kids, and we cite the Pew research on that, 5 million of our nation's families, I should say, don't have internet access at home. So what happens to those kids when we're doing all this digital stuff at school and they go home? And overwhelmingly, it's our Black and Hispanic families. We've got to be really cognizant of that and do everything that we can to support them. So we talk about that. We also talk about empowering students, or maybe moving to a responsible use versus an acceptable use. Like, I don't want my kids to just be acceptable. I want them to be responsible. What does that mean, though, in some sort of policy, as opposed to just a sheet of paper everybody signs, nobody looks at the end of the year? How do we make stuff like that meaningful? So then we also talk about, very, very quickly, two more pieces. One is the community. What does research say on what actually works in engaging the community? When we take a look at a variety of studies, we took a look at what worked, what helped improve education and those connections. How do we build that trust? How do we build that transparency with the community? And then ultimately we wrap up on leading the charge. What does this take? How do you do this? Avoiding initiative overload. We have, as admin, we try and do 27 things at once, and we wonder why people are like, their eyes are falling out of their head because there's so much going on, down to like, how do we model? And ultimately another strand in our book is relationships. We are in the relationship business, and we are here to love and care about kids first and foremost. And if we lose sight of that, we either need to get out, or we need to find a better way, and we remember it really, really quickly, because we're here for kids first. And so Eric and I had a lot of fun writing the book. We did a lot of research related to it. I got to tell you, I learned just as much in the process than I think I ever knew on some of these topics. But having the research to back up why you might do things like 3D printers or makerspaces is really helpful. Because let me tell you, 3D printers or makerspaces can be amazing opportunities for kids, or a total waste of money. What's the difference? And so we address a lot of those things in there. And how do we avoid making things a total waste of money? How do we make sure that we can make things more personal, more authentic, and not just be kind of pie in the sky? We really want it to be grounded in evidence. One of my favorite parts of the book is something that Eric and I didn't write at all. At the end of every chapter, we hear from typically two. It's either a principal of the year, a superintendent of the year, a CIO of the year, somebody that's a dynamo that's really leading the way. They tell their story in about 800 words of, here's some of the issues that we faced as a district. This is how we overcame it. And this is where we're going. And you hear from practitioners from around the country, from urban to rural, to females to males, to leaders of color, to white leaders, all across the board. We wanted a very diverse set of voices throughout because equity is a theme, and that lens was really, really important for us. And so it was a really dynamic project we had a lot of fun with, but it's awesome for my end. It's rewarding to see it get in the hands of kids, in the hands of school leaders, whether it's teachers, whether it's principals, or so on and so forth. I will give a shout. There's also a free study guide. So I don't care if you don't buy the book. I don't care. Take a look at the study guide. It's free. Go to ASCD and you can search on ASCD Learning Transform Study Guide, and you'll find it. It's free. We made it available. Eric and I planned that and went through all of that purposefully to help support schools and school leaders in the work that they're doing. And about 10 to 15 discussion questions that are available online, whether or not you buy anything at all, I don't care. Taking a look, it's just a great resource for everybody that's moving forward in education stuff.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are so many things that you hit on right there that are just super important, like the opportunity gap, you know, the need for relationships, culturally relevant pedagogy, culturally sustaining pedagogy. And I love the fact that it's so grounded in research, because I can definitely agree with you. There is a lot of money sometimes that's just being thrown away because some things might be trendy or buzzwordy. So this is extremely important to have the facts to back up why. So starting with the why, like Sinek says, definitely, I just love to transforming learning. So definitely awesome. The book is Learning Transformed. So this is by you, Tom Murray, as well as Eric Sheninger. So everybody check this out, put out through ASCD. So I can't wait to dig in.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Love your feedback. And for anybody that is reading it, Eric and I are trying to respond to all the tweets that we see with our hashtag, and we picked a unique hashtag purposefully so that way it wasn't getting junked up with all other stuff. And it's kind of an acronym for the book. So it's LT for Learning Transformed, the number 8, and then keys. So LT8 keys is the hashtag we're using specifically for the book. And Eric and I are doing everything we can to connect with people that are using that are sharing out. And it's been really rewarding on our end personally to see what do people relate to? You know, Sarah, a lady tweeted out this morning that she was on like page 2 or 3, and we talk about sexism and issues. We're both males, obviously. I'm guessing people were able to take that in when I talk about Eric and I, right? But we talk about it, like the why for us is we've got daughters. Like they're coming up through the system, and when we take a look at sexism in our society and how it gets in the psyche at an early age, like walk down the average toy store. What do you see? The blue stuff for the boys is often explore, design, create, fix, build. What's often for the girls? It's typically homemaker stuff. And yes, I'm stereotyping and saying that, but we point it out, and we point out the research that shows, yeah, that's the case, but also how it impacts the psyche of kids at such a young age. And so for our little girls, even 2 males talking about that, it's important that we use our voice to share that stuff. But as 2 girls, as we both have a son, we both have a daughter, you know, we want that for them, and we want to be able to help support their leaders as well. And so yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share that. I appreciate that.
And thank you. This, oh my gosh, like my brain is about to explode. I cannot wait to jump into this book right here and just learn more about what y'all found out through your research. So how can people get in touch with you online if they want to connect?
Sure. So here's myself. No, I'm just kidding. So take a look. My website's thomascmurray.com. It's an easy way. All my contact information typically is on there. People want to email, they want to shoot me an email or whatever. Absolutely. On Twitter, it's at Thomas C. Murray for my brand. And there you go. Thomas C. Murray, feel free to reach out, shoot me a DM if you want to connect offline or whatever the case is. Happy to do that. And I'll see you around. I get to a lot of conferences in my role, probably hit about 20 a year. I get kind of conferenced out, to be honest with you. I'm not going to be the guy that's out all night long, but I'll be the guy that's hitting different sessions, trying to come to your sessions that are doing things. Not just you, Sarah, the people that are watching, because I love to learn and go as well. I'm not the guy with all the answers. I'm the guy that's continuing to learn alongside of all of you. I had the opportunity to share some of those experiences and different things like books, but you know, I get to a lot of conferences. I'll be at Model Schools next week. I'll be at ISTE next week for a little bit. National Principals Conference the following a couple weeks later. And so if we're out and about, we're at a conference, you see me out, come say hello. I'd love to hang out.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And I love that you're learning alongside with everyone, and definitely appreciate that about you. So so thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great conversation, and really thank you on behalf of EduMatch, so that everybody's learning more about Future Ready and more about your work. So appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today.
Hey, thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for investing the time. Don't forget to check out futureready.org. There's something there that can support you, and it's free. Thanks, everybody. Awesome to be here. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Thanks so much, Tom. So this will be available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher within the next week or so. So we're taking a break this Sunday and the following Sunday because of ISTE and traveling back and forth, things of that nature. But come back on the 9th of July. We're going to be talking about Makerspace, and we're with Mr. Novice on Twitter. So anyone can be a panelist. So just just go to our tinyurl.com/edumatch sign up, and you can be a panelist, and subscribe at bit.ly/edumatch podcast. So thank you again to everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Tom, for being here with us.
See you around. Thanks, everybody.